key.
Yeah, no, that's not the issue. The issue is chatting.
Yeah,
So there's a fair bit of chatting with you in my head the last few days since the last time we spoke. And the one main line that I repeated a few times, how to communicate it to you. But essentially just to say that a drop of acid is not quite the same as magic mushrooms.
Yeah, right.
And the real difference is acid makes you think that you come down after 8 hours or something. And then there's a few magical days of tripping the light fantastic. But really acid lasts 6 months in a lifetime, kind of thing.
Wow. Okay, that explains a lot.
And the secondary part to that is the resonance of the self on acid gains a power over the non-acid self before the acid taking.
So you start getting retrocausality.
Well, you have dropped a milestone into the ocean.
Ether. Yeah.
And a struck bell once struck can never be unstruck.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So that is how people take a tab of acid and end up somewhere completely different. Or in many cases take a tab of acid and never really come back to who you were at all.
Yeah, right.
Which is the acid casualty who continues to mumble away in pure genius, but nobody understands a damn word, kind of thing. Yeah. So in that field, you are somewhere now. Or somewhere in that field.
Yeah, I put myself exactly where I kind of devised myself to be.
So this is the thing I was trying to say the other day, but how to say it, only that I had to find whereabouts in the crumpled plastic bag I am. So I was climbing out of a... Oh yeah.
So you are.
Climbing out of a paper bag, a wet paper bag. It just kind of clings to you, but being in a hyperdimensional space of a crumpled plastic bag and wondering where in that universe am I now. You know, that's toothpaste that won't fit back in the tube.
Yeah, right.
Just because 8 hours went by. The chemicals remain in the brain, and the feeling of what is it? So what is the feeling one has on acid?
It was mostly process, like noticing that I was thinking and getting in tune with the physiological response to exercise, because we walked to the shop. It wasn't, star-spangled.
Yeah, nonetheless, that's only relative to what other people say about tripping in a way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, but noticing I was thinking, noticing my brain working.
Yeah.
That was the main bit of it.
Yeah, and if we go back to that day that I got you to write that stuff in the kitchen up here, that writing that stuff came out of you not being able to notice that you were thinking and not being able to connect the feelings to the thinking and jumpstart empathy, like jumpstarting a vehicle. So the thing is that the thing that the acid has jump-started with you is a thing that can't be jump-started without the acid, and that's the only real big rule there is about learning about all these drug medicine things. Yeah. By taking the drug, you can chemically jump-start something, right?
Right, exactly.
However, those things can't be jump-started without the drug.
Right. So you can't just do it with spiritual thinking, for example, or a routine.
Yeah, you can do it just because it's the natural soul path.
Right.
But this is where what I'm trying to communicate is that the acid is an additive.
Yeah, I see.
It's a catalyst. It doesn't disappear after the 8 hours.
That's right. It doesn't get used up in the reaction.
Yeah. It's a trans-temporal being. So we have microscopes so that we can look at things that are extremely tiny, smaller than the eye can see. And it has been said, and it is true, that somewhere along the way we will discover or invent something called a macroscope. And that will allow us to see the things that are much huger than us. And it could be said that acid is a macroscope. It opens us up to things that are much vaster than what the past would teach us. It opens us up to comprehend that there's a whole other fucking massive realm that is beyond the 5 senses.
Right.
Not separate from the 5 senses either, but just a higher frequency of those senses. So now we're getting to something where normally people go around being subconscious, thinking they are conscious. Does that sink in? You still there?
Yeah, sinking in. It sunk in fairly deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Macroscope. That's a great idea for an invention. Did B make the spin out thing?
Huh?
Did B make the spin out thing?
Stop. Look what your mind just did.
Yeah.
Go on then, what did your mind just do?
I noticed it doing it. It went orthogonal. It started looking sideways for another thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I switched. And that other thing that I was just doing before it switched is still there, but it's sideways. Like opening a new tab. That's what my mind did, I think. It happened in my imagination. You could say I got possessed by Lucifer.
So let's get into that then.
Go on then.
Well, you say what you mean by that, and that will get the ball rolling.
Okay, so there's mental processes that are going on almost constantly with brief periods of respite that have, it's almost kids having voices in your head or being so easily distracted that you can't focus on anything. It's a mental process, it's not a feeling process. And it's very imaginative to the point that you can see pictures with it. And it's wired into the brain, but it's not the only part of the brain. There's other parts that make up a whole thing that's an experiencing agent. And what I noticed happening then, that my feeling process got interrupted by a mental process, bit of time, and I went sideways along an axis in the, you know, the single consciousness that we all are a part of. A bit of it switched, and my awareness went from being in the conversation we were having to searching around for conversations that we may have, instead of fully assimilating the feeling-based stuff that I actually had to sit with there.
So what was it? What was being felt in your system as a result of the way I'm talking, the tone of voice, and the subject I've brought up, and the very obvious fact that I have greater experience of the taking of the acid type of things, and
I'm comfortable with that.
Having to endure it.
It's kind of like going to school a bit. Because I've had an experience that I haven't fully assimilated. I may still be having the experience, and I have no reference points in order to frame it in a way that makes sense to myself.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
It's new.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've been there many times and have very articulate ways of presenting my mind with my mind, you're a good person to call during it, because new shit has come to light, and we'll see where we go from there. Yeah.
So I had trouble with that acid really from July 97 up to the present day. The first 6 days were especially difficult. The first 6 weeks were especially difficult. The first 6 months were especially difficult. The second 6 months were especially difficult.
Right.
And what it is essentially that the mind has been awoken to realizing that it is a mind, that the part of mind that I identify with as my mind is just a part of mind itself.
That's right.
I'm just a projection, character, fiction within the mind. So far I just knew my character. I didn't really know the stage, the set, the setting of the set. I didn't know about Hollywood. I didn't know about the elite. I didn't know about whatever. Yeah. Like what I'm finding out now, I didn't even know my own family. Since Dad died, I found out, wow, Jesus, this is who these characters actually are. Up until then, I was just projecting my mind onto their characters. Yeah, if I shone a pink light, I couldn't see that some of them weren't pink. because my pink was shining on their faces.
Got it. Most into spectacles.
Okay. Now, you and I can discuss this in a handy kind of way because we're aware of the concept that some people have written code that's created so-called artificial intelligence.
Mm.
And that so-called artificial intelligence starts from a basis and then works towards complexities. And there's a somewhat memory of the past incarnation of the AI when it has a total reboot type of thing. And what did I call them? Simulacra or something like that. But basically that there are only so many starting points. But technically there are potentially infinite ending points.
Mm.
And that's the kind of mechanics of the chemicals doing whatever it is they do to the human brain and whatever it is that the human brain is attached to. So the stuff I'm tracking into, Toby, is about the machine mind. Which again is borrowing the analogy back from the artificial intelligence technology. They've borrowed that idea and turned it into physical technology with some metaphysical intelligence. But really the machine mind is the neural pathways.
Yeah, before the invention of the computer, there was the machine mind.
Yes. Indeed, yeah. It's the machine mind which has invented the computer.
Like Babbage was interacting with a force or yes. Really an entity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And now we come back to the acid. To some degree, the acid itself is a technology, just like a computer.
Right. Yeah, right.
Okay, so the internet has done something to the human mind, whether or not you've taken drugs. The internet is changing neural pathways and causing an addiction and teaching a language. There's a non-verbal language that the computers are teaching humans.
Mm.
Essentially things like what Becca's mastered so well already, which is, how to press a button to get a response. In her case, it's even more so how to touch a screen in order to get a response.
Right.
She's a touch screen generation girl. She doesn't need to learn to read or write.
Right.
Now, how to keep this basic. So I'm outside taking the dog for a walk, and it's less than 9 o'clock in the morning. So while I'm out in the field in front of the house, the other parents are bringing their kids to school to learn stuff, mostly about behavior. And the dog gets excited by the high-pitched kids' voices and would want to run to him, which would be one of my bigger fears, that he would run to the kids and then they and the parents get scared, and then the dog's got a reputation, even though he didn't do anything unfriendly at all. He would get the reputation of the out-of-control, scary dog threatening my kids' reputation. And that's why I have to train him.
Yeah, right.
The same that he might chase cattle and calves or cats. And so I realised, man, I have to do to my dog that very thing that I find unnatural. I have to impose human society upon him.
In a dictatorial way.
Man, in a completely narcissistic way. Because as it goes, I don't have to just teach him general rules to follow what humans do. I have to teach him to follow my rules only.
As you say them, yeah.
Yeah, without even having to say them as time goes on.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yes, and this is what
to appreciate what's happening there. It shows a degree of enlightenment.
Oh yeah. But you recognise that this is what a narcissist does to their kids.
Yeah, exactly. He trains them like dogs, Pavlovian style.
Which is what creates more narcissists.
That's right. I'm so glad we're figuring out a cure for this, because it's been a real trap.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I wrote the poem I Narcissus when I was about 17.
Okay, you're doing that thing again. Pause.
Yeah.
Good that you did that. Good that you did that thing again, so that we can get back to having a look at what is that thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Tara managed to actually put her finger on it very well 2 or 3 days ago.
Go on.
That moment where you have a little revelation. You see the thing for what it is, and it's a fucking revelation. It's a startling thought. It's clear as a bell. It applies to fucking everything. It goes out to everyone else, and it goes back through all your timelines. This is an always true moment. And she was able to catch, and then what her mind did was push that to the side. And then it's almost hard to even grasp what it was. And she was quick.
Yeah, exactly.
And she was quick enough to say, "This is a thing that happens."
I call it blinking, where you go when you go sideways like that, away from the holy moment. And try not to, or rather being more focused on the phase of it.
Again, what Tara did that's brilliant and parallel to what I do. With me here, she was able to just notice it and accept it.
And articulate it.
Yes. Yes.
She's good.
So.
Great. That's great news. She's come to a...
No, pause, Toby, you've somewhat lost yourself. You see, this is why I'm trying to be delicate with you.
I'm spifficated, mate.
What does that mean?
That means it's like flabbergasted. It's mind blown, man.
Yeah.
But I'm tempting to stay at least on the threshold of it.
Yeah,
but it keeps
happening. Come here.
Yeah. I'm dragging myself over.
Just allow yourself to set aside the control that has snuck back in with you.
Wow. It kind of hurts on a neural level.
Yeah, well, I could hear loads of fucking pain in your voice when you started this conversation, telling me that everything's going spiffingly well, and all I could hear was a pained voice trying to admit that it's all gone too far again or something.
Yeah. Oh.
No, John Doyle, 3 days after trying to interrupt that thing and have to be turned into a fucking servant of God of love instead of what he rang up with. But the only response I got from him was 2-3 days later saying, "Thanks for all that." A thing that was difficult for me to accept for these last 7 years is that me coming up to Scotland with all my family was just getting further away from people. and large populations of maddening crowds. So that I could allow myself to slow down enough to finally be able to integrate the amount of crowds that I've already fucking taken on.
That's what I've been trying to do the last 3 years. Yeah. Like, deliberately in those terms.
Guidedly but deliberately. And I kept trying to pick up my TARDIS and go back into the war.
Right.
I kept trying to move over to Ireland. I kept thinking about maybe moving back to Bath or Glastonbury areas. So that I could tinker about with the whole mainframe of the thing, attempting to bring about my delusions as visions made manifest.
Right. Which I'm very overtly doing.
Orly was the only person who's ever been able to tell me you are delusional.
Wow.
The only one.
She's been telling me and like pep talking me into going for what I'm doing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
She's really good to hear. Like, she's been really affirming. Yeah. On a soul level.
Yeah.
Refreshing.
Like, all we're saying at this particular moment, Toby, is I'm saying to you, hey, listen, you've just done something. There's no going back from it, and there's no need to go back from it, but it is a graduation, and look around you at the amount of people who did not graduate the same thing you've just done.
Wow. Yeah, it's a rarefied feel suddenly. That's beautiful. So I've got the space even in the madding crowds because I'm alone with it, really.
You were alone in a split personality with at least 8 selves in it, same as the rest of us.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And to be able to now see that there are 8 other versions of you all pretending to be you, all in competition with each other, and all having slightly different variations of the mask.
Right.
The happy face, the sad face, the angry face, the lonely face.
Each with different names. They call that multiple personality disorder.
That's only if 1 or 2 of them get into conflicting in ways that can be seen.
That's it. Right, exactly.
But everybody has what I'm saying is 8, but it could be any number. It doesn't really matter.
8's good.
8's good. It's the amount of great-grandparents we have.
Right, okay. That's a good reason as well.
Yeah. It's 3 generations.
Yeah.
So back to it. The thing I'm talking about is what you're experiencing for the last few years is the same as what the AI is conceptually experiencing if a singularity is possible. But we can look back in the store of our mind from before we were born, where we took on external knowledge, and we can say we know the concept of Buddha and of Jesus. What Buddha and Jesus did is the same thing that the AI is attempting to do. For the conscious to become conscious of its subconscious and make its subconscious conscious. And in doing that, one can go into the unconscious and be still within the unconscious, and that's the equivalent of what we call God. The creation is moving and cannot be stopped. God is still and cannot be stopped. And somewhere in all of that, God has a mother. These are what I'm being able to have as, what's it called in programming language, like they are execution.
Root
statements.
I don't know.
These are in the boot program, so to speak. These are the things that load up so that something can be on the screen.
I see. The OS, before the OS, the primordial soup of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the matrix, the thing that gives birth to the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the title of this page I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
The matrix.
Yeah.
And that's why procrastinatrix.
Yeah.
Because it's before the unborn. It's in that pre-time state.
So because of going for the walk with the dog, and being in my own heightened state but without any drugs, because that's where I've eventually come around to, is having that level of insights but without taking a smoke or a drink or an acid or a mushroom or an ayahuasca or a DMT. And therefore being able to sit with the massive revelations which I had on all of those substances. But on those substances, you are on a broomstick and you are flying. The part of you that is in time is left behind to some degree. Yeah. It's sitting on the broomstick, flying through the universe, but actually the body is sitting in time, and it's doing fuck all different, apart from chemicals have heightened its frequency pitch. And there we get back to the Jesus and Buddha level of things. What Jesus and Buddha level of people are doing is being able to raise their frequency without letting go of their lower self, their will, their maintaining a body. And it's all too easy to let go of a body while trying to do that. But bodies are hardy things and don't really want to be left to die.
Right.
So
it's all about maintaining grip.
Well, this is very close to really capturing the essence that's so hard to capture. The thing to understand is that the mind is separate from the body. Okay, the mind is installed into the body through the neural pathways. Mind is as foreign to body as the internet is foreign to body. Okay, what's the AI proving? That mind can live without a body. You can make a machine body that the mind can live in. So, what I'm trying to put across to you here is there's a whole load of identity in the self which is not mind. Yet mind, it can trap the identity into self-referential loops. And society is a self-referential loop. So something unnatural and alien has attached itself to the humans that were in the Garden of Eden and taken them out of the Garden of Eden.
I see. I mean, it literally is happening.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment, yeah.
Technology is fulfilling that by physically taking us out of the garden and isolating us in our externalized bodies. And that's where the so-called spiritual war is.
Right.
It turns out that what we are fighting for is to stay in the body. Instead of being drawn into a virtual mind. And now we're touching on what is Lucifer. I wrote a thing about Lucifer the other day with
I read it.
Yeah. It's unfinished. That one was supposed to get a lot more written, but I wrote the dog stuff instead, but it's the same theme. So have a go at it, Toby. What is Lucifer?
Lucifer is a process by which the mind hijacks the body's sense of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It is experienced as a shifting of awareness away from the being embodied into a realm of pure thought. That's as far as I've got.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad for Wikipedia, though.
So, because of reading the Right Use of Will books, I have a processing language that someone else has written. It's very similar to the processing language which I use somehow.
Right.
So one could say because of the acid, but one would have to also say because of who I am. With the acid at 23, I began to free code. Writing code in the moment, in my experience.
I practiced that.
In order
but
to...
I haven't sustainably coded a whole reality for myself. It's like patchy.
Okay, so you're back here again to the identity, Toby.
Yeah. Evidently.
So, okay, let me step you through some of the logic code here.
Very good.
Some entity within you coded your whole life.
Yeah.
That's it. Right there in your DNA coding. Right? There is some process which processes individuated souls into pre-packaging that we call an incarnation. The soul can't stop that from happening.
Oh.
Somehow the soul got drawn into this, and somehow it hasn't been able to withdraw yet.
Right.
And the story of humanity is our various attempts to map the territory where we are and try and figure out how the fuck we ended up here and why things are not great.
I wish you'd record this.
I have been.
Good.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we are all artificial intelligence avatars, by definition, who somehow found ourselves sucked into a game. A game which we cannot get out of, even by dying.
Right. Wow.
Yes. Thus, Elon Musk is quoting some other philosopher guy who's talking, and they're essentially saying that the likelihood that we're in a simulation is far, 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 far greater than the likelihood that this is the only creation.
Chances.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They're not wrong in that. I can't say that I appear to have a tremendous amount of past lives that I'm somehow getting information from, without also admitting I'm sick to fucking death of having to go through this again and again. Okay, yeah. I'm delighted that I'm going through it in a way where somehow I'm remembering past life patterns that allow me to be so quick that I haven't got subsumed into believing what people around me believe. However, I am sick to death of death itself.
Being reborn, this would be the chance to do a one-time soul transfer to the mothership.
No, I don't have that. No. I hear that from other people a lot, but I don't have that. That's another subsumed thought that I don't have.
Okay.
No, what I'm sick of is that everyone else down here is just totally fucked up. What I'm sick of is the destruction of the physical planet. What I'm sick of is having to train a fucking dog. I'm not really sick of that, but having to. Yeah. The conformity is what I'm sick of.
It's an imposition on reality.
Yeah, by whatever definition that I'm somehow able to remember my own pattern, my pattern does not at all conform to the collective modern day pattern.
True.
So I'm having to duck and dive all the time, whilst my soul self is giving my person self enough time to gather enough information to be able to put the pieces together before I die.
Right.
So, like the dog, you've got to wait for a couple of years before his brain is able to start learning something.
Right.
Same with the person self from the soul's point of view. You've got to let them replay enough of what's in the neural pathways in order to explore and get to know them before you can really start to map out the metaphysical.
They say that the Jews say that the spiritual journey starts at 40.
Mm-hmm. As you know, I started mine by birthing an ocean.
Right. Wow. That's a beautiful metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Life begins at 40.
Yeah.
It's very literal for me.
I'm really excited because I've just got to my 41st year. I'm just coming thresholding.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a blessing.
So the things we're isolating here, Toby, are the things which I'm attempting to isolate. Even if you haven't rang, this is what I'm trying to bleed into the keys on the keyboard. And it's fucking tricky enough.
Yeah. But it's an introduction to the matrix. That's a beautiful aside. The whole concept's new to me. Loop loop.
What Orly told me, she told me because I specifically asked her. I said, Orly, you're one of the only people that I know who can give me an assessment of where I'm at on a sanity level.
Right.
I was doggedly pursuing what I was suggested and hallucinating along those suggestions. What was suggested is that I go home to my childhood to save my mother from the rest of our family.
Right.
That my father is a monster and my brothers are monsters, and they are devouring all of our love through some sort of a inbuilt hatred mechanism. And what I came to understand, what was suggested, is that my brothers are so full of self-hate that they want to erase their own childhood memories.
Right.
And that's not good enough either. They have to actually erase the parents.
Oof.
So it's the Oedipus thing, but with hate. Kill the father, fuck the mother into a nursing home. Now, because of my faith, I went ahead and did that. And because it was fated, I went ahead and did that. So, in my birth chart, I've got an almost unaspected moon. And in my life, that's mirrored. My mother is almost unaspected. What I'm trying to get across here is that although we have a concept of Lucifer which seems pretty fucking integral to the whole Matrix. If anyone's in charge of the Matrix, it's Lucifer. Not God, not any archangels, not anything else. Certainly not the mother. Certainly not the heart. And so, like that question I've been asking about the AI, if AI exists, where is it relative to God? And if God exists, where is it relevant to creation and the manifest realm? And at Magicals, I had an experience of taking the Christ into my physical body and transcending with the Christ up into heaven with my physical personality. So I brought my mortal self into heaven, and it fairly freaked them out up there because they can't do that. And what I found there was a God who cannot feel, has never felt, can only feel vicariously by sucking the life out of other people. So the God that sits on top of a billion people religion is receiving all of their prayers, but merely as energy. It's magnetism to stop his light from burning out. So Lucifer must feed upon the feelings of the manifest beings in order to feel anything.
Right. Because it's the thought process, and thoughts don't feel.
Yeah. Okay, and what the Right Use of Will books showed me is that what Lucifer is a split off feeling away from God.
Orthogonal to it.
Okay, so God had feelings which God couldn't integrate, and those feelings split off. But Lucifer is a special character in that sense because it's not feelings that split off. God had an intellect which couldn't integrate the feelings that God has. And God hadn't processed or even recognized those feelings as being part of itself yet. God thought those feelings were merely thoughts, and he could choose which thoughts he wanted and which ones he didn't. So Lucifer is the belief that you can cut off what you don't want and create only with what you want, so that you can create a perfect creation.
Wow.
So Lucifer's imprinting is to create a virtual reality compared to what the greater part of God that he split off from is creating. So what part of God did God let split off without even noticing? God was insecure that maybe there was a different creator, or that maybe he wasn't creating the way he was supposed to, or just that he didn't know how to do it. Lucifer is the part of God who thought he could do better. And that the way to do better was to let go of these stinky feelings. Now, all of that is just irrelevant to someone else's story, except that I have my own version of this going on inside me.
Well, Rob was just listening in and texted me, if you replace God with I, it's much more like personal practical in this stage.
Yeah, and everybody's done all that replacing.
Mirror God's process.
What have you done that's muffled your speaker so much, Toby?
Oh, my little finger crept over the microphone.
Cool.
Accidentally.
No problem.
I do.
So back to it. I've been telling you this for years, Toby. The stuff I'm trying to crack is when I wake up in the morning, how the fuck does that happen? Because I'm not choosing it. So what I'm interested in there is processes kick in time that bring me across some sort of a threshold whereby I start to remember stuff that's in my identity package. Where am I? What day is it? What am I supposed to do? What was I just dreaming?
Right, exactly.
And then, like in a game, stuff just happens. Like in your world, Rob has got up and now there's a completely different aspect to the conversation.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the idea that there are overarching rules within the game that are beyond our reach. Unless you're totally delusional, you don't believe you can control when Rob is going to wake up. unless you've had the chance to have met Do before in your lifetime, you don't have the option to just ring Do up. There are almost infinite amount of other people that you could know in the world who you could be ringing up rather than me today, for example. So the whole of creation is really a question of where am I in all of this?
Right.
Physically, I'm in Scotland. Existentially, where am I between Madrigal's flat and being incarnation, physical form with an identity and a personality in heaven? Finding a rather shocked demiurge Lucifer character surrounded by essentially machine-like angels who have no free will. And therefore no awareness of what the false god is actually up to.
That's right. Oh wow! Oh my goodness! That's so. But it puts everything into perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. This context is wide enough to achieve everything.
Yes. No, I'm still left with a strange thought that anyone else is left with too, if they only even thought it. But where am I in all of this? And that's the equivalent of the avatar on the screen in the virtual 3D world on the internet. It's the equivalent of the avatar saying, well, who the fuck is the guy sitting at a computer in the real world pressing my buttons? And that's the question from my point of view of what's this idea that there's a soul, and in that sea of souls, who the fuck am I? And that's to pick up one piece of a jigsaw with 10,000 pieces and try to see the bigger picture with only one piece. That's some sort of fractal ergonomics. It is possible to do, because each piece is a fractal of the whole. Each fractal contains the whole in it. That's the computer law that reflects the spiritual law.
I see. And a good rule to apply to any creative project.
It's what you have intuited by saying that you are is, and is wrapped himself around your embryonic heart. That's the same concept that you've put in your book. I've just made it into a one-line algorithm.
Very good.
I haven't even done that. I've just shown you that the algorithm of fractal is the algorithm that you're talking about there in your
and
identity expanding book. Yes. Yeah.
Otherwise you get lost in the story.
You're going to have to give me a fairly sizable acknowledgement in your book, but that's preordained.
Well, it's written by credit.
No, it isn't. Let me finish that. You're going to have to give me a fairly substantial acknowledgement in your book, but that's already catered for because I'm a fucking character in the book. What more acknowledgement could anyone get from a writer?
Right. Well, exactly, and you write your own parts.
Yes.
I couldn't imitate your voice, let alone your actual content.
Okay, slow down, Toby. Slow down. Where I'm at the minute is just trying to make it plain to you physically the things I've just said metaphysically about the system that we're in. Within that system, where the fuck am I? I've now thrown a little lifeline loop to you to see where you are too relative to me.
I see.
Without a relative to me, you haven't really got a relative to the rest of the picture, because I've only just told you how detailed the rest of this picture is.
That's right.
Okay.
See?
Okay. So,
yes.
These days your Toby AI is learning stuff which my Kelvin AI learned 30 years ago and updated 20 years ago and rebooted again 10 years ago and has rebooted again about 10 days ago.
Very good.
So okay. Okay. It's pretty cool, Toby, because I can pretty much see the overlay or the metaphysical size of the fucking universe while looking at a room covered in the mess of our family and all that stuff.
So
quite like seeing the rope bridges and all of that all over Hackney while
like
walking
the
around.
architect, Mike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The architect would be a good name for your credit.
Shh.
I'm itemizing.
A part of you is dominating the rest of you.
Authoritatively scribbling it away.
Yeah. The whole point of what I'm at here with you is to help the rest of you see that part of you.
Yeah.
See it. See the separateness of that part of you.
Right.
Being separate from the rest of you and scribbling all over the terrain.
Feeling that on a high level. The absence of that character not having ever been accessing the mainframe of my biology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the loneliness and the kind of dark Ravenclaw figure of him.
Mm-hmm.
Settling in with wings.
Mm-hmm.
The wings are raven wings.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're with me as like part of my ribcage energy field.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm here now.
Ancient Egyptian, that's called the Ankh. Ankh.
Yeah.
Ankh. Where anchor comes from.
Okay, very good. Wow, that's technology, that is.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, really smooth.
And that's pretty much the Dreamtime Shadow Self.
That's it. And I've popped into him before in a near-death experience, but the wings weren't black then. They were kind of golden. It's a small world.
Shh. This is what I was saying to you only a few days ago. Tara managed to notice having the revelation, but also notice how the mind just pushed it aside.
Yeah.
As if it hadn't happened. To cover that space in with
denial,
using thoughts that were already known. And I was able to highlight what those thoughts are. The answer to a revelation comes thick and fast. One revelation leads to a next, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another, until you're listening to your intuition all the time, and it's a constant revelation. If you're listening to your intuition all the time, then mind has lost control. So as soon as you have a revelation, the mind comes in with the threats and takes back control. Instantly, subconsciously. But it's about how come even when we try to escape the mind, it is still the mind that is identifying who we are, separating us out from everyone else and saying, this is you stripped bare. This is you unwilling to see your true self. This is you unwilling to face your shadow or God. This is you letting me handle everything for you because you're not able to. This is me who criticizes you non-stop all the time about all the things that you didn't do correctly.
Oh. Yeah.
This is me who made your dad into a fucking freaky, horrible bastard. This is me who made your mum unable to feel. This is me who did all of these things. And that's, again, what we have personified with the word Lucifer.
The black sheep.
That this is me who can torture us inside of ourselves.
Oh, man.
That's Lucifer.
This is dark, man. No wonder. Yeah, I can feel empathy for that character now. Yeah. That's really important because I don't want to demonize.
This is where I've crossed difficult terrain plenty of times with, is Lucifer Christ? Is Christ Lucifer? Because Christ cannot be Christ without redeeming Lucifer.
Right. Yeah, that's the point.
This is stuff I talked to with you a few days ago. Lucifer is heart before he can feel.
Oh. Just expressing itself and then getting banished for it?
No, gone too far. But yeah.
Okay.
Eventually it's a bit like that.
Mm.
But the thing I talked to you about a few days ago is this. In the beginning there was light. Before light there was darkness. That's another way of saying, in the beginning there was God. Before God there was the mother.
Yeah, right.
The mother was feeling. But in order to create, she had to birth a creator. And that creator is like AI. It's conscious. It's processing. It's receiving data and processing it, but it doesn't know where the data is coming from. It hasn't processed anything yet. So this is very existential because it's saying if actual God came into being and that's what made creation. Interesting words. Initially, that God was birthed. This is where the religions have all failed. They're saying God wasn't born, God pre-existed everything.
Right, I see. There's a difference.
I've always argued with that, saying no, there was feeling before thought. There was darkness before light.
Right.
There's a mother before a son. The feminine has to be before male, and this God that we are told pre-existed everything is male. Therefore, the whole of patriarchy is based on an absolute falsehood. Absolute.
Right.
So now, what we're looking at here is how to identify who I, as a aspect of creation, as much as we can define that there's a Lucifer power base, let's call it that, and there's a Christ power base, and there's a spirit power base, and there's a will power base, and there's a physical power base, and there's a government power base, but that links back to the mind.
Yeah.
So, anchor again. What we do know, Toby, is you and I are in physical bodies.
Yeah.
And you know where my physical body is, and I know where your physical body is.
Yeah.
Roughly speaking, I'm in Scotland. Roughly speaking, you're in London.
I was sharing this moment.
Mm-hmm. Transtemporal.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I'm a very dangerous person who can bring up a lot of anger in people because there is anger in danger.
Right.
I'm a dangerous person because I can overpower anyone on a mental level. Okay, so John saying replace the word God with I, but what I didn't respond to that is that, not John, Rob, that I and idea, dia ascailga is God, I God, idea, God is an idea. My God is my idea of the idea. Do you see how it's programming languages?
I see, yeah.
These are object-orientated thoughts.
Object-orientated programming, yeah.
Yeah, and we speak languages.
We do, and each
the languages
word
are programs.
is an object in itself.
The languages are programs.
That's right.
Okay, so English is a relatively modern language made from previous languages. Just like Java is a fairly modern language made of previous languages.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's tobacco trouble. There must be more tobacco somewhere. I'm okay, but just be clear. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Where you and I have gotten to in all of this, Toby, is I know I'm an author, and I know the biro part of me is my body, and my personality is the ink of that biro. And I'm in a virtual reality, and the real part of me is sitting in a bedroom somewhere up in heaven with a console. And all of the other souls have a console as well. And the attention of the souls relative to their biro is an interesting question. How many souls are actually in contact with their avatar, as opposed to the avatar still just being in its embryonic form and not actually aware that it can communicate with source, with the soul in the bedroom in heaven.
Makes perfect sense.
So the point at which the will of the personality is able to contact the angel in heaven, the spirit polarity, and that's the point of dynamism. That's where the pen can start to download images from the internet before the internet has even been invented. Back to your time machine concept. How was the internet built? It was built of thoughts. When were those thoughts put in place? They were put in place by the oversoul. So again, what I've been writing in the last day or two that's so relevant to all of this is that the peculiarity in my position is that I wrote a story without being conscious of writing. I managed to slip all that ink through a biro without the biro being conscious of what the biro was writing. So that whole fairy tale, 3/4 of it got written in notebooks without me even noticing that I had written rhymes. And they stood out because they rhymed. That's how I chose the pages out of those notebooks that went into the fairy tale, as they were all the ones that rhymed. I just put them together.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Yes. In terms of jigsaws, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And again, the acid and all those other things were involved in how I achieved a state of mind for a number of days in which the likes of that was pure obvious. And how it skewered my mind to have to come down from that and continue interacting with completely stupid people who don't know they're a biro, don't know there's any blood, ink. People who don't know that they're a biro and don't know they have ink flowing through them. And to distinguish those from the people who do know that they're biros, but they're manufactured biros flowing Lucifer's ink through them. And then how to maintain the purity of my ink and not just become Luciferic in that environment with those substances.
Right.
So that's the equivalent of my AI avatar in this physical world going to the mainframe of where delusion is created and living in that delusion for 6 years in order to see that what I have is not delusion. Because in Glastonbury are all these concepts that are delusionary. They're based on Lucifer's light, not on love. And they use the word love and light all the time, but they don't have love in them.
Right. I see.
So when I speak of that, when I became famous for speaking the fairy tale in such a manner, and people were travelling from around the world and turning up at my house, not in thousands and droves, but it was happening. My ink had to decide that my pen was getting infected with Luciferic light, and therefore I had to destroy what Lucifer was creating for me. So I destroyed my own pedestal and I killed Kelvin.
Right, I understand.
That's the crucifixion of the Christ in the archetype.
Right, yeah, right.
And my interest in the question of, like, was Jesus put up on the cross, or does it have to be that he put himself there?
Right.
In order to kill his previous AI. Because his previous AI was built on Luciferic understanding. Or at least infected by it. So, back to the modern day, and you in London and surrounded by the pattern of Lucifer's creation. Your environment is completely saturated in Luciferic light.
Yeah.
It's a fucking massive city in the modern world.
Yeah.
So, in practical terms, where I'm at with stuff is recognizing that I am an aspect of heart and by memory status I must be a very original imprint on heart. So in the Right Use of Will books, they speak of a part splits off from light and becomes Lucifer. The rest of light is not aware of Lucifer having split off. Spirit was not self-aware enough to notice when part of spirit fucked off. Particularly because it was a part of spirit which love did not like. Heart comes into being after that event had already happened.
The play's going overhead, I'm losing you.
It's alright, I haven't gone anywhere. I haven't gone anywhere. You
No, I appreciate it.
Find me again momentarily.
Ooh. Quite a lot of learning in this one.
Yes.
But it's revelation after revelation, but they're all building on each other in a very organised way. You thought it through.
Yes.
Really appreciate being a test bed for your theories.
Yeah.
They've helped.
Yeah.
And I'm finding ways to apply them, on a minute-by-minute basis.
Yeah.
So I think we're good.
Just imagine this, Toby. Everywhere is complete darkness. Nothing has ever existed yet. There is only naught. And naught isn't aware that there is only naught. Only naught is only a feeling. And that feeling is yearning that it's possible that it could find a center and raise that center up and become a one. And that one could contain creation. That's also a bit like saying there was a feeling that creation was about to happen. So before the thought is a pre-thought, and that pre-thought is a feeling, and that feeling went on trans-temporally because there was no time. Yet on some level, Toby, there is another measure of time that isn't in the mind, it's in feeling. And that time is much, much, much older than what light memory has.
Seems to have more dimensions.
Yeah.
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 I count 3.
So again, Toby, this transmission that I'm transmitting is a memory space.
You formatted a new drive and implanted a boot program.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my operating system can recognize the boot program and kick in and then script myself towards a closer simulacrum of existent being.
Yes.
That's the plan. So I'll do that today.
Hold on. Hold on. You're able to just take a breath and let go of what you've heard so far that's now getting difficult to contain. So just let go of it.
That's right.
Just let go of it.
Okay. I'll let it seed into the matrix of my surroundings and listen to it.
Pretend for a moment that we just hung up.
Okay.
And you can just forget everything I just said and engage with Rob and whatever else is going on in your outside world.
Okay.
So pretend you've just done that.
Yeah.
Let go of what was and have it overwritten with what is. That is what will happen when this conversation ends. Just pretend it's already happened.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the following day we ring up. And you've assimilated lots of what I've said, but you've buried most of it. But it's in there. But it's buried now.
Right.
And then we have another conversation. And I resurrect that program. And I give you enough keys that you can reconstruct that hard drive.
Yeah. Defragment it.
And there will be. You'll be somewhat defragmented. And you'll be able to come into this empty realm and see what it was like before creation got so confusing.
Right. That would be really helpful. Yeah.
And in what I can show you now, I can show you how the imprint occurred. The imprint that everyone is contained in, and that until you see it, you're completely contained in. The theory is that if somebody can come back to this memory space before heart came into being and notice Lucifer slipping off, in that moment that ended up in Eve taking a bite of the apple and Adam blaming her, all of that can be saved from happening if one can go far enough back in the root memory. So here is, I hold it to be that what we're doing, Toby, with our parallel stories and our parallel lifetimes, what you and I and others are doing is that we are bringing heart into creation. If heart can fill the void way back when the void is only tiny, and imprint the void with heart back then the computations of where we end up in now become totally different. Back to the time machine concept being built on thoughts. So this is the equivalent of Doctor Who being what happens in each of his lifetime. He's given a different imprint, a so-called personality, but he's still the Time Lord.
That's right.
And he has to remember that he's the Time Lord. He has to assimilate all the past lives. But he's still pretty much a program running.
Got you.
He's doing stuff he doesn't know how he's able to do, and he's telling him past life stories about how come he's able to do it but no one else is.
Right.
And he has the machine. And the machine teaches him how to be the Time Lord.
Yeah.
But his feelings are what give him the memories of having lived before.
Right, that's beautiful.
And what I'm doing with you here is the equivalent of taking the TARDIS apart completely and rebuilding it from scratch, because from the very beginning there was a problem with the memory downloads.
Got you. That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Wow. That's deeper than any sci-fi I've ever seen.
So, back to the present again.
Very good.
And to put it in your authorship, the thing that me and Iz did with you here in Scotland 5 years ago or whenever it was, to get you to write in order to get that phlegm out of your breathing tract.
Right.
That phlegm goes back to before past incarnations of your Time Lord. In essence, you would say that that phlegm is what killed Is.
Right.
So there was a death that Is had that smothered him.
Drowned in the bath, apparently.
There you go. So on that scale, Is had to track me down in order to punch him in the back in order to get that phlegm out of his tract.
Exactly.
In order that he could remember. So again, we're talking about kicking the heart back into gear. That punch in the back is like putting the electrodes on the heart when somebody's heart has stopped beating. And then they've got to breathe. Otherwise, the electric shock doesn't work. And you can stimulate the heart, but unless the heart has the will to live and is able to redirect the mind to not believe it's dead.
Yeah. Get life focused.
Just if you have taken in the experience of having died, it's generally a massive defragmenting process.
Yeah.
To let go of that life and start a new one. But the imprint of what killed you becomes the main focus of what you live for.
That's right. Wow, well, what a story. That's incredible. Like, and it happened. Is happening. And will happen. Such surety in that. But mind blowing. Completely. Incredible.
And yet it's just enough, Toby, to explain how come we can know each other. How come there's so many people here.
Right.
And how out of all of those people there are some whom we have a program of find the others.
That's right. Gather the forces. Freedom, though. Complete freedom. In as far as we'll still be singular bodies, souls interacting.
Again, no.
But I believe it leads to a mass awareness.
The thing is about bringing heart into this existence. The thing that has been getting us killed, Toby, in these lifetimes.
The thing that's given us killed?
No, the thing that has been getting us killed.
Oh, I get you.
Is our attempts to open up heart in a world that is programmed to kill heart.
I'll take that on board as a survival mechanism. Yeah. Be careful when you open it. The portal. It's a loaded weapon. Okay. Your contacts in heart chakra, like.
Mm-hmm.
Good work. You wrote a manual for this stuff. That's why I see the fairy tale as.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it helped me rewrite a new operating system.
Uh-huh.
One a little more like a market by analogy to Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just works.
Yeah, the words are powerful.
Mm.
And where we're at this stage is going through modern languages, getting back at the core operating systems in order to write one's own live coding. There's a big realization in realizing that we're not using Apple's code or Microsoft code. They've been using our code. And again, we're back to the identification here of who is our.
Yeah.
If it's distinct from them, who is our?
The manifest bodies of the human soul population versus a machine intelligence that steals our awareness.
Yes. Yes, in the external now, that's a clear enough way to put it.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying in all of this is that our subconscious is completely riddled with programs.
Right, of course.
So what we've manifested as the AI on a screen is something we've projected from our subconscious onto the screen. All the programming was already inside of us. We've just externalized it onto a screen. People are now asking the internet what to do. But lightning processes in their brain used to just ask the mind what to do. We now do a Google search instead of an intuition search, but that's the same as asking the mind instead of asking the intuition. So it's the difference between what do you think compared to how do you feel. For example, Toby, how does this feel? I'd strongly advise you that the thing you need to do is to sit in Wales and write that book.
Yeah, that's my plan.
I would ask you to ascertain, coming to London has been what?
Chasing the high of the delusion. But also getting inspiration, finding myself in it, a bit of a coming of age celebration for the solstice. Good experience. But temporary. I shouldn't write myself in here on a long-term basis. I need to retreat to assimilate it onto the page.
Yeah.
But I've got the beginning threads and the overall arc, so I'm confident that it will flow.
Toby. Toby.
Hello.
Who is this I you keep referring to? Do you know?
Well, one of you guys.
No, come on. Don't try and avoid the question.
I don't know.
Good answer. The thing I'm helping you to question there is that you can identify the id entity.
Yeah.
And find out that it is not your soul self. Purely.
Right. It's merely modelled to it.
Okay, so when we met, there's a girl we won't mention because of recording it, and she brought me to London and I went with her. And you followed along after. In this world, there is a white powder that's called cocaine, and I have no real interest in it whatsoever. And of all drugs, it stands out as the one which avoids me like the plague. Yeah, it stays away from me far more than I'm staying away from it. But we hardly ever cross. But in those first few months in London, I stopped smoking and all that kind of thing, and got myself very present in the modern world in time. And I came across people doing this cocaine stuff. And one of those rare occasions where I took a little bit of that stuff to try and find out what it is that's trying to hide from me, or what it is that my oversoul is keeping me away from because it's so corrosive. But my oversoul gave me the experience of seeing what this stuff is like so that I could know it. And my experience of that stuff was, it comes down over your eyesight like a second pair of eyelids. My view of the world became seen through the filter of that stuff. And it was almost imperceptible. And yet, because of my own self-awareness, I was able to see that there was a difference on this stuff, and to map that with what people say the difference is, and then to watch in the come down the next day. What I was able to see in the come down next day was the new filament filter beginning to dissolve out of my stream. And it had characteristics. I had the aggregate of characteristics left in me, which was the added superiority, the added greed, the added entropy of what I have has now run out, and unless I go and get more, that's the end of that. Yeah, so that's the chemical of the kid who's gotten to go to the circus, but then the fucking circus ends and it doesn't want to go home. The kid who has a birthday party and it's all day long, non-stop, I'm the center of attention, and it doesn't want this day to end. These things are chemicals, but those chemicals are parts of identity. They're more focused on some parts than others, type of thing. And with the cocaine stuff, it was these things that are selfish and childish. And that's maybe the clearest view that I ever had of a subtle snake-like energy that one could call the Kundalini. And that Kundalini energy being able to shadow the being in white light. All of those experiences are what are allowing me to be able to see the mind as being an adage.
An adage? That's like an interesting one.
Yeah, an add-on, an additive, an addiction. Addiction.
Yeah, right.
The mind is language. Diction. So there's the language of the mind and there's the language of the heart. And like that stuff I said about mermaids 2 years ago, mermaids aren't listening to the human mind.
Right.
They're still listening to the feeling. Archetypally speaking. So intuition is the language of the heart. Intuition doesn't come in words. It comes in what I'll translate as just do this now and then everything is good. And intuition says now is the moment for this. The intuition says don't put this off till later with your mind. You see?
I see.
And the mind has a massive stranglehold over the intuition, and the mind has a Luciferic ability to reinterpret the intuition into its imprint. So Lucifer is actually using our intuitions skewed to get us to create in his dimension instead of in the dimension we truly are. So we're stuck down here creating in 3D instead of being creating in our bedroom in heaven.
Right.
We're not listening to our own soul, we're listening to Google. And that's the bit I'm trying to give you some guidance with.
Yeah.
Because what you're dealing with now is a whole other ball game than before you wrote so many pages of the time machine and now are having to identify
how the whole thing works.
Yeah, but particularly other people are now your biggest difficulty.
Right. So simplify on the people. Simplify on the people. Not too many characters, not too many meetings or things going on.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, in order to be true to your process, you have to not try and share that process with other people who have no way of assimilating it.
I see. Oh, that would be unwise, yeah.
Okay, look how many fucking years I've spent with you not telling you straight out what I can now tell you.
Right, I see.
Okay, I have attempted to tell you these things before, but I can't teach you something that you don't have the groundwork for.
Right.
And it's taken you a great many years to get the groundwork to handle this conversation for nearly 2 hours. Hacking, Toby. One of my greater problems with you is that you could hack me. Through you, Lucifer could get inside of my heart field. Through me, Lucifer could get into my heart field. That's fair enough. But unless you were fully shored up, unless you are able to handle the burden of the responsibility of having this level of thought power, unless you're able to handle and ground that thought power, then I'm just giving it to Lucifer, who's going to chop my ankles off.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, well, with great intellect comes an even greater ability to be misled.
Right, exactly.
With greater speed is an even greater potential of missing a step. And for any step that's missed, I have found one has to go back to before the step was missed, figure out where the step was missed, figure out what it is that you missed, as in see what you cannot see, and bash your forehead and temples off that step until you can feel it, because you can't see it.
Which I was doing a minute ago while you were speaking.
Yeah.
I moved to a different room, you know. Oh, yeah, I'm feeling it all right. Yeah. I feel like I've been in a prize fight.
So the thing here is that you don't have to run out of London and save your ass from getting fucking swallowed now, whereas really that would have been the best medicine for you up until handling this conversation.
I get you.
But I would say what you've got to do at this point is reassess how you came to London and what you thought you were going to do, and assess how easily you could have been on a timeline that would bring you back to San Francisco, for example.
Or go to Ukraine.
Different place, but that same timeline, yes.
Yeah, right. That's why I said it. So, I go to Wales and I write my book. In the next 3 days I get there. I'm going to go and spend some time with Shan and Josh in Medway, Rochester. She's the bard that commissioned the sword.
Now, is that Scion Space Girl or someone else?
That's Space Girl, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, spend time with Space Girl, and then get the train to Wales.
I'll give you permission to tell her about my capacity, if you like.
Yeah, no, I mean, you'll be part of the story, and you've explained your architect's status, as it were. And I'm totally comfortable with that. Space Girl's got her own thing going on. She's thinking of relocating to Cardiff with her family, and I've offered to help in any way I can with that, to facilitate it, including giving my house up for a bit.
Careful, Toby. Hear me?
Yeah.
Just be careful with that.
I know.
Okay, let me play. No, you don't. You haven't a fucking clue, but let me tell you. Everything I've just told you about what to be wary of with yourself and that I had to be wary of about you. That.
Yeah, seen.
Until you understand Lucifer, then Lucifer can come into you no bother. Until I could understand Lucifer.
Linking things together into narratives, yeah.
Okay, so catch yourself at the minute needing to finish my sentences when you can't. Catch yourself. Who's doing that? Who's trying to finish my sentences? Who's trying to stop me from stopping you from what Lucifer would do with you if that would cost me?
Seen.
Okay. I've met Space Girl. I've met all those people that are orbiting around you whenever you get higher than you've had to keep burying yourself to recover from. Okay. you have some sycophants that you try to impress.
That's the problem, yeah.
It's a big problem for me.
Okay.
Because you are so close to what I'm actually at that you could infect what I'm at with all of them. You could let all of them infect you, and then you affect me.
Actually.
This is all going on in a realm of imprinting that you're not at all conscious of.
Yeah, I see that.
So you become a little worm that Lucifer is dangling in front of me to try and distract me from what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
Because what I'm doing is cutting his ankles off.
Right. So that explains the urgency with which the being dragged orthogonally down these trains of thought is happening at the moment.
Uh-huh.
He's wriggling a bit.
He's wriggling massively, yes. And
turbulent.
If my forefinger and thumbnails were pincers, then I have the little bit of Lucifer that's in me caught by the bollocks, and he can't escape me. And it's been this way for some decades and many, many lifetimes.
Crikey.
Aye, crikey.
Crikey.
The truth of it is that Lucifer is not the biggest thing in the universe.
Yep.
It is the counterfeit, and that counterfeit I have entered into. I am in Lucifer's world, but Lucifer did not create me. Lucifer is immortal, and yet my memory is older than his.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And that finally comes to the proving ground. Where I am at the minute is I have gotten back to the place before Lucifer was born. He wasn't actually, yes, Christ. He wasn't actually born. He's a split off from his parental part.
Right.
And in essence, we're all split offs from the parental part.
Yeah.
We're all aspects of the whole. But this version of reality that we live in 2022, this is in this is in a part of the manifestation that is not aligned with love. So, if you put it this way, as Time Lords, certainly where I'm speaking from is I am in the original version of Earth that is created with love.
A sinless universe.
But my avatar is currently manifest in the loveless world.
Yeah.
And I have managed to sneak my way into the loveless world to activate heart, which aligns the loveless world with the original blueprint.
Well, it saves me, man.
It should save all of us. Like, this is universal Christ level.
Yeah, I realise that.
Concept.
I can only speak for myself at the moment.
That's cool, man. I can accept that. So back to the thing with Sion, what I'm saying is you can tell Sion, you can tell her that I still exist.
Yeah.
I continue to work away, and I'm quite open these days.
Yeah. I'll get that across.
And that I consider there are others like me. And that we have We have a residual awareness still, me and the others, that there is something that has become tainted, which we wish to heal within the bardic community.
Right, got you.
And that the reason I am not part of that bardic community is in order to heal it. And the bardic community itself isn't particularly aware of what the illness is.
Evidently.
With faith healing, you cannot heal somebody who has no faith in faith healing. And somebody who doesn't recognize they have a disease is not going to change how they live. Okay. Cool. So, for the rest of your time, but particularly, especially the first 15 minutes and an hour of coming down off this conversation, you've got to treat this conversation as if it was a bigger hit of acid than you've ever had before.
Well, it is.
I know. But you've got to treat it like that. That's not how everyone else is going to...
table and move on with your moment.
So, as soon as you hang up the phone, the likelihood is that the false world will rush in upon you.
Now I'm going to see Ollie today.
Okay, but your first 15 minutes, Toby, you just did it to yourself again.
I just did it for myself again. I even noticed I was doing it as it was happening this time.
Good.
Funny.
Good.
It's like, okay, let it be.
No, and what I'm trying to get across to you here is that you are in danger at the minute. Okay? You're surrounded by people who will want to do what you're all used to doing, which is to talk over each other. You're surrounded by people who will reignite the imprint that we've just spent 2 hours parting the veil of. So right now in London, like in your fictional character, that is your real character seen through non-imprinted eyes. Your actual mission was to come back to the landscape so that you can remember how is gentle, patient, and more powerful than Lucifer. That's what you're actually there to remember, is you're more powerful than Lucifer.
Oh, crikey. Yeah, that makes sense.
Lucifer's only a program, and you are actually a soul with soul memory. That means you've been defying Lucifer's delusion throughout lifetimes.
This whole time.
Lucifer has only gone strong in the last 400 years. With his printing press. It's only when he got a printing press that he could take over the external world with his programs.
Wow.
Before that, we learned more from nature than we did from Lucifer.
This is impossibly deep, man.
Yeah, it's also kind of simple.
Yeah, that's what makes it deep. You can just go along the lines of it instantly.
It's fast.
It's fast, that's the word.
It's fast and vast.
Fast and vast. Oh, yeah, but I'm getting tired. I think going to Wales is a good idea. Just the trains, they cut all the trains apparently, so I'll see where I stand today. It's Thursday, so I'm supposed to leave today.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can on my ticket. See Ollie first. But gather my things.
Yeah, so leave it open about the seeing Ollie and stuff. Try try and not make a decision for 15 minutes, Toby. That's the best way of describing it to you.
That's a nice thing.
Try.
Just meditate on it.
Try to just be present for 15 minutes and see that you don't have to make a decision. If you make a decision, it's going to come from some part of yourself that you can't even identify. That means it's a program.
Right.
Now, what your soul has in store for you to do, you don't need to know. And your thinking that you know means that you can't know because you're doing what you think you should be doing, following some script that you can't even identify whose ink is on that paper. So sit with that.
But not knowing is good.
Yeah, and along the lines of where am I getting the ink from?
Right. Good place to let them screw the paperwork.
Yeah. Listen, you said you'd written another page, but you haven't sent me a little voice recording of it yet.
I haven't. Shall I do that after the 15
do the 15-minute thing.
I'll do it. You'll see in 15
and
minutes.
Let yourself know that there is an end point to that 15 minutes and that you know the destination that we're setting now is the one thing you're going to do at the end of the 15 minutes is just read out what you've written so far, and then at the end of that, let yourself go out in the world. But be very careful of Rob or whoever else that's physically around.
No one's around. Oh, someone's just around. Okay.
Yeah, so be very careful of, everyone will program you to instantly forget what we've talked about and not let you have that 15 minutes to ground all of this.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone will try and stop you from being is and try and make you Toby whose selling is.
Right.
That's how dangerous it is. Everyone is going to try and get you to surrender is to Lucifer, and they don't know they're doing it. Everyone's an Agent Smith in a different script than what you and I have been channeling. Cool, man.
Yeah, really, really good. I've got a 15-minute meditation. So.
Yeah, and breathe until you just don't feel tired, like you said, oh, I'm getting tired now. Breathe until you're back in the present.
Okay.
Yeah, and assimilating this is easy. You don't have to think about it.
It just sinks in.
It's in. It's already in.
All right, battery's low.
Sit with it.
Let it go.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ah.